The air in there, it tasted like old rust and forgotten screams. I remember the chill that wasn't from the broken windows, but from something deeper, something that clung to the decaying plaster and peeling wallpaper. My flashlight beam cut through the absolute black, dancing over rusted bed frames and overturned wheelchairs. Every step I took echoed, not just my own, but like others were pacing just behind me, or perhaps just ahead. I told myself it was the wind, the settling of the old building, but then I saw it. A shadow too defined to be my own flickered at the end of the long, dark corridor. A whisper brushed my ear, cold and clear, saying my name. I wasn't alone. They never left. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against the silence that now felt heavier, more oppressive. I froze, every muscle tensed, my breath catching in my throat. The shadow was gone, swallowed by the gloom, but the echo of that whisper, my name, reverberated in the hollow chambers of my mind. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't my imagination, it was real. I gripped my flashlight tighter, the plastic cold and slick with sweat. My eyes darted down the corridor, straining to pierce the impenetrable darkness, searching for any sign, any flicker that would confirm what I'd just experienced. A floorboard creaked somewhere above me, a slow, deliberate groan that sounded like a heavy footfall. Then another. It wasn't the settling of an old building. It was a progression, a measured pace. I swallowed hard, the sound loud in my own ears. My mind screamed at me to run, to turn tail and sprint back through the dilapidated wards, past the rusted beds, and out into the blessed, indifferent night. But something held me there, a perverse fascination, a morbid need to understand, to see. I had come looking for echoes, and now they were finding me. I forced myself to move, one hesitant step after another, my boots crunching on unseen debris. The air grew colder, noticeably so, a pocket of frigid air that seemed to emanate from the very end of that long, dark hall. My breath plumed in front of me, a ghostly exhalation. The walls here were stained with what looked like ancient water damage, but the patterns seemed to twist and writhe, forming grotesque faces in the dim light of my beam. I shone the light into an open door on my left. Inside, a room lay in disarray, a single broken chair overturned in the center, and what looked like child's drawings still tacked to a crumbling wall, faded beyond recognition, but undeniably there. A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. This wasn't just an abandoned building. It was a mausoleum of lost lives, of suffering that had seeped into the very foundations. As I pulled my beam away from the room, my peripheral vision caught it again. Not a shadow this time, but a fleeting glimpse of something pale, something almost translucent at the very end of the corridor just before it turned a sharp corner. It was gone before I could fully focus, but the image was seared into my mind, a spectral whiteness like a wisp of old linen or a forgotten gown. My heart leaped, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. I heard a faint, almost imperceptible sigh, like a breath held for decades finally being released. It wasn't a sound of sorrow or anger, but of profound, endless waiting. They weren't just echoes here, they were lingering presences woven into the very fabric of this forgotten place. And they had noticed me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Noticed. Not just observed, but acknowledged. The air thickened around me, heavy with an unseen weight, pressing in on my chest. My breath hitched, and I could feel the blood thrumming wildly in my ears, drowning out all other sounds, save for the frantic beat of my own heart. Every hair on my arm stood on end, a primal alarm screaming through my nerves. This wasn't a casual encounter. This was an invitation. Or perhaps a summons. I gripped the flashlight so hard my knuckles ached, the beam wavering slightly as my hand trembled. I forced myself to scan the corridor again, desperately trying to catch another glimpse of that spectral whiteness, but there was nothing. Only the oppressive gloom stretching into an endless maw. But the feeling, it was undeniable. It was as if countless unseen eyes were now fixed upon me, scrutinizing every inch of my being, weighing my presence in their forgotten domain. The sigh, that faint, endless sigh, seemed to resonate deeper now, not just in my ears, but within the very bones of the building. A mournful chorus of long-held sorrow and forgotten cries. Then, a new sound. A slow, deliberate scrape, like fingernails dragging across rough plaster, came from just around that corner where I'd seen the wisp of white. It was soft, almost shy, yet it cut through the silence like a razor. My stomach lurched. My mind was screaming at me to turn and run, to break free from this suffocating dread, but my feet felt rooted to the spot, encased in lead. A morbid curiosity, a terrifying compulsion held me captive. I had come seeking these echoes, and now they were manifesting, drawing me deeper into their web. The cold intensified, swirling around me, biting at my exposed skin. I could see my breath in ragged puffs, each one a desperate plea for escape. I took another shaky step forward, then another, drawn by an invisible thread. The scraping sound continued, a rhythmic, dragging cadence, growing subtly louder with each step I took closer to the bend in the corridor. It wasn't just a sound, it was a beckoning. My flashlight beam danced ahead, trying to pierce the impenetrable darkness that shrouded the corner, but it seemed to devour the light, leaving only deeper shadows. As I reached the very edge of the turn, the scraping stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was even more profound, more terrifying than any noise. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst. I slowly, painstakingly, angled my flashlight beam around the corner. The light sliced through the black, revealing another long, identical corridor, lined with more decrepit rooms. And there, at the far end, silhouetted against what little faint moonlight might have filtered through a distant grimy window, stood a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and draped in something dark and tattered. It wasn't moving, it was just standing there, watching me. And then a low, guttural moan, a sound of ancient pain, slithered down the hall and wrapped itself around me. They weren't just lingering, they were waiting. And now they were greeting me. The moan wasn't just a sound, it was a physical force vibrating through the very floorboards beneath my feet, resonating deep within my chest. It was a lamentation, a scream of pure, unadulterated agony that seemed to have been held captive for decades, finally unleashed. My breath caught in my throat, a choked gasp escaping my lips. My flashlight beam, which had been steady despite my trembling hand, now began to flicker erratically, casting dancing shadows that made the impossibly thin figure at the end of the hall seemed to shift and writhe. It was like the very air was fighting against the light, trying to plunge me back into the suffocating darkness. And then it moved, not with a step, not with a shuffle, but with a horrifying, fluid grace that defied all logic. It didn't walk, it glided, a dark, tattered specter flowing towards me down the long, empty corridor. Each inch it covered felt like a mile, each passing second stretched into an eternity. The moonlight that had dimly outlined it now seemed to fade, as if the entity itself absorbed all ambient light, growing darker, more substantial with every terrifying foot of ground it covered. I could feel the cold radiating from it, a bitter, bone-chilling cold that seeped into my marrow, stealing the warmth from my body, leaving me numb and paralyzed. My mind screamed at me to run, to turn, to flee, but my feet were rooted to the stained, crumbling floor. My muscles locked, a desperate, futile resistance against an unseen force that held me captive. My eyes were wide, fixed on the approaching horror, unable to tear away, even as my vision blurred with unshed tears of terror. The tattered fabric that draped its form now seemed to billow and writhe like living shadows, revealing hints of what lay beneath. Not bone, not flesh, but an absence. As it drew closer, the guttural moan intensified, joined now by a chorus of faint, ethereal whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls, from the very air around me. They were indistinct, countless voices overlapping, a cacophony of pleas, screams, and desperate, forgotten names. My own name, whispered earlier, was now lost in the horrifying symphony. The figure was almost upon me, its height towering, its form filling my entire field of vision. My flashlight, now flickering violently, gave one last desperate pulse of light, illuminating for a horrifying fraction of a second what lay beneath the tattered shroud. It wasn't a face. It was a gaping, black abyss, a void where eyes and mouth should have been, a swirling vortex of ancient, unending suffering. And then a hand, impossibly long and skeletal, not quite solid, not quite transparent, reached out from the darkness of its form. Its cold, dead fingers, tipped with what looked like rusted, broken nails, brushed against my cheek. The touch wasn't painful, but it was an absolute, soul-shattering chill, colder than anything I had ever known, colder than death itself. It felt like my very essence was being drawn out of me, a silent, agonizing siphon. My scream died in my throat, replaced by a silent, primal terror that consumed me whole. The world spun, the asylum walls blurring into a maelstrom of shadows and despair. I wasn't just an observer anymore. I was part of their endless waiting. The next thing I remember is the taste of dirt and the cold sting of night air on my face. How I got out, I don't know. Did I run? Did I scream? Did they just let me go? The memory is a fractured mosaic, shards of terror and an overwhelming sense of loss. My body was found hours later, miles from the asylum, shivering and incoherent, but physically unharmed. Physically. But I know better. The cold never truly left me. It's a constant companion now, a chill deep in my bones that no amount of warmth can dispel. And the whispers, they follow me. Faint at first, then clearer, like the rustling of old hospital gowns, always just at the edge of hearing, always calling my name. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see that gaping abyss, that void where a face should be, and I feel the phantom touch of those skeletal fingers still trying to siphon my essence. They didn't just notice me, they claimed a part of me. I am no longer just an observer. I am a witness, a vessel carrying their endless waiting out into the world. So tell me, have you ever felt a chill that wasn't from the cold? Have you ever heard a whisper when no one was there? Because some places and some souls never truly let go, and sometimes they find a way to follow you home.